見るなって。
ミサイルだジロン。
え、何？真上からか？アイアンギア！
ジロン戻るの？
ラグ交代しろ！下がれ！
ジロン何やってんの？戻ることはないでしょ？ X ポイントへ突撃よ！
そうだそうだ！ミサイルだ！大型ミサイルが落っこちてくる！
え？あ、コードセット！
何？
ストップ！ダメ、急進かよ！
どうすりゃいいの？ちゃんと決めてよ！ダメだ！間に合わない！
ジロン逃げよう！
アイアンギアを見捨てられるか！
ジロン何する気よ！
今さら主人公らしく死んだってカッコつかんぞ！そう簡単に死ぬかよ！アニメでさ！
うわ！ジロンさよなら！あんたを知って幸せだったわよ！
そんなセリフは済んでから言えよ！
ジロンやったやった！
新刊はどこだ？新刊は！
これがイノセントのやることかよ。笑い草だぜ。
笑ってる場合か！ミサイルの弾頭を狙わせろ！今撃って爆発させればエルチは巻き添えにしないで済む。撃て！ああ、バカ！よせ！当たったらどうするんだよ！ああ！ラグー！ああ、おしまい！
いやそんな！
いや
ジロン死に急いじゃダメよ！
くらえ！よけろ！よけろ！
Hello and welcome back to another Plamo review. Today we're taking a look at the Real Robot Revolution R3 Walker Gallia from Xabungle. Alright, and getting into the articulation, this is the first 1/100 figure I've reviewed actually, so this might be a little bit more difficult. The head is on a rotation, it's pretty tight, and also all of this is attached to the back of the head, so you're not getting a ton of movement there, and you get a little tiny bit of forward and back, though it's not much. Not really a big deal, this is just a cockpit anyway, and honestly it's not really shown moving that much in the show, so not a big deal either way there. The shoulders are on a forward-facing joint, though you have to rotate the arm in order to get full range out of that, as well as an upwards joint, which that doesn't really get much at all, does it? Also, the polycap for this rotation is very tight, and the little piece that plugs on here isn't as tight, so sort of put pressure on this when you're rotating the arm, or else this whole section will turn, which isn't good for the kit. You can get a full movement out to the side, which these polycaps are kind of loose on mine. Not so much that they can't hold a pose, it's just this could have a little bit more resistance. There's a rotation at the bicep, of course. There's a joint at the elbow here, and then a second joint, so you get almost a full bend. Given how bulky these are, that's probably the best they could have done without it looking really bad. And the hands are on a ball joint, as well as ball joints here. These fingers are attached, but you could separate them if you wanted. And also there's a hinge in the wrist, though it doesn't actually really add that much more movement. There is actually a waist rotation, and it's pretty decent considering how this thing actually, is built. No forward crunch, but because of the transformation you can hinge backwards. This turret is actually articulated up and down. The wheels can all spin freely. I say freely, they can spin at least. Hips are universal joints, so absolutely no problem getting an absurdly high kick because of the lack of skirt. Also, they can actually pretty much go out just below 90. There's a rotation at the thigh, and this piece is on a hinge to get out of the way. There's a double jointed knee bend for pretty much a full bend. Considering how bulky this is, I'm going to consider this a full bend. There's a ankle pivot up here in the leg, which is good. There's a ball joint down here, and also because of the transformation, there's a really good front and back ankle pivot. Toes are individually articulated as well. That was a little bit more unruly than I would have hoped, but I hopefully showed off the articulation decently there. The kit is really well articulated. I mean, considering it's 1/100 scale, it should be, but it does a good job with a pretty unorthodox design. Now, moving on to accessories. There is no sticker sheet, but there is a tiny amount of color correction you have to do. On the outside of the Gallia, you need to do the little yellow vent on the forehead, as well as the wipers and the little spikes on the side of the cockpit there. And that's it. Everything else is color separated, which is great. On the inside of the Gallia, you do have to paint the seats and the wheels and the dashboard, which you can't even see, but I did paint it. And of course, the pilot figures. And that's a good segue into the accessories, because you get 5 pilot figures. Now, 2 of them are for the leg types that come with it, but you do get Jiron up in the head, Chill down here, and Rag, which I'm leaving out of the Gallia, though she sits up in the turret section. That's because I'm putting her in the Model Ride Xabungle with Elchi when that comes out next year. Look forward to that review, because I'm looking forward to getting it. And speaking of the leg types, we might as well get into those. Get 2. You have to paint the gray on them. The turret, the hands, the joints, the little engines there. Thrusters underneath, and then I did a light wash on them just to get a little bit more detail. And you do have to paint the pilot figures because they're all white plastic. Wasn't really a big deal. By the way, I did add a little bit of blue tack to these to keep them in because they're not pegged on or anything, they're just literally sitting there. So either glue them or blue tack them like I did. Also, these are technically articulated. There's hinges for the arms and the legs on the torso. These things are so tiny and easily broken, I don't really want to do that. I even stressed some of the plastic just taking the nubs off. Be very careful with these. Like, when I say very tiny, I mean very tiny. They're about 3 centimeters tall. Alright, before we move on to the other accessories, I do want to point out there are a couple of option parts. These are alternate headlights. These red ones are anime accurate. These are accurate to the old toy, so choose which one you want. I obviously went with the anime accuracy. And finally, one last thing before we get into the weapons and other such things. It does come with a little pamphlet, which is, funny enough, probably my favorite thing in this kit. Just, it reads right to left, it's entirely in Japanese, but it's just a lovely little thing. This is spoiling a bunch of stuff you saw the ICPM toss at the opening. But yeah, it has people who worked on it, a bunch of different art, the old kits, interviews. I think I haven't Google translated this yet. A full list of the vintage ones, I think. More art. A lineup of all the old kits. Actually, I think this is the R3, but all the rest are the old ones. That is the original Walker Gallia, if I remember correctly. And on the back you get a lovely little character artist drawing of Jiron with the Walker Gallia. I was not expecting that pamphlet, and that's probably why I like it so much. And there is one final little option part. The tiniest little spotlight that plugs up on the shoulder. It mildly affects the articulation on the head, and honestly I don't remember it ever showing up in the show, so I'm just electing to leave it off. But it is actually 2 parts. The glass is actually a clear piece on that clear runner that you put in, and oh boy, that was a small part. I almost lost it about 5 times trying to put it in. I painted silver behind it and it looks amazing, but I don't really want to use it. Mostly because I'm just worried I'm going to lose this thing. As a matter of fact, I'm putting it right back in the Ziploc bag I'm storing everything in right now. Now, moving on to the weapons. You get the machine gun, rifle, whatever you want to call it. Not a ton of parts to it, but it does have them moving and very easily removed. Seriously, it doesn't fall off or anything, but this thing does not like staying on. It's a really nice little bipod, and does actually come with an alternate one that's split if you want to have it on the ground actually using the bipod, which is funny. I'm just going to be leaving it like that. And all of these have these pegs that just fit into the hand. They were a bit too tight, so I've sanded them down a bit, and I kind of overdid it a little bit. Now they're a little too loose, but that's my fault. Otherwise, you do get the cigar bazooka, as I like to call it. I can't remember if the official name refers to it as a cigar, but I mean, look at it. And yeah, I did paint sort of dark gray around the inside of this piece, just so that it has a bit more shading in there, but you don't need to do that. Everything else is actually color separated, including the slightly different color on this and the handle. And it hides the seams pretty well. The only one that's really noticeable is back here, and I don't really care about that. Finally, for the weapons, you get the boomerang. I'm bad with names, aren't I? It's a boomerang with like motorcycle handles on the sides. It fires off a bunch of missiles in a big wave. It's the anti-Weezer gun, but for a lot more. What's a good band that has a lot of members? You know what? Come up with one in the comments. Also, I do want to point out, all of these are removable. Thank God it comes with a spare one so I can show it off. I did actually paint all of these, and you literally can't even see that, but I know it's there, so... Oh, did you think that was all? Well, if so, you haven't watched Xabungle. No, we have a whole other section yet. Look at the timestamp. This thing transforms. Well, it transforms is putting it a little bit charitably, but it does separate and turn into two vehicles. And actually for that, you get this, which is an action-based adapter for the hover vehicle, which, yeah. Also, there is a little panel back here that has a action-based hole inside of it, so you can put the whole Gallia up on a stand or have the lower half on a stand if you feel like it. Okay, I can't for the life of me remember what the vehicles are called. I know there's something dumb, but completely escaped me. I didn't even watch Xabungle that long ago, and I can't remember what they were called. Not important. The important thing is that it actually does it. So, let's get this in here. Hinge that up real quick. Try and get this out. There's a panel on the back that's actually pretty well hidden by this. You have to hook it out. Give me a moment. It's really easier said than done, apparently. There we go. Okay, let's pop that out. By the way, it only goes out that far. That's as much as you need to actually... Excuse me a moment. Lift this. Come on. It literally just slides in. It doesn't... There we go. Okay. Lifts off. Plug that in again for a second. And let's do this one first. Mostly because it's pretty much already there. You literally just rotate these back. And pop the hands off. Well, you're supposed to pop the hands off. These ball joints are really tight in there. But you flip this out. Flip it around. There's a vent on the inside there. Can't really see it. I'm going to try and pop them out. Give me 1 second. Okay, I got them. Yeah, these things are pretty tight. Not so much that I was worried about breaking it, but it was a little bit annoying. And you flip it around, clip it back in. Also, one good thing. This peg extends really far. This, since it's a hover vehicle, actually has landing gear. And these panels fold out into these little struts. So it's really easy to pop those out. Anyway, just flip these both around to the other side. Lock them back into that little slot. Alright, let's straighten that up. Yeah, this slides onto the back here, and you can attach it onto an action base. Oh, also, I should mention, that spins. And I managed to put it in upside down the first time. That was fun getting out. But yeah, there's the little hover vehicle. I'm going to pull that off again now. And yeah, like I said, there's supposed to be landing gear on it, but I'm just going to put it down for now. It's literally just these. You just pop out those parts and swap them over. Anyway, let's move on to this one. Because it's really, really basic, honestly. You just fold this up, keep the toes out straight, do that on both sides, straighten the legs, rotate them back, flip this down, and there you have it. And yes, I'm serious, they don't really look like vehicles, do they? They just kind of, it's two halves of a robot lying down. And I mean, the wheels do kind of roll. It's not great, but it does kind of work. By the way, the wheels are real rubber, and they're on the same runner as these little pads on the bottom of the feet, which are also rubber, and help a lot with this thing staying stable. Having them in these modes reminds me of something else. There's actually a couple of removable panels. This doesn't have a full inner frame, but there's a couple of pieces that you can pop off here and there. Don't be like this, come on. There we go. One panel here, which exposes some detailing on the back of the leg, which I don't even know what that's supposed to be, but it is there. Let's get that back on. It's on both legs. And also there's a little side panel on the head here that you can pop off, which exposes the engine on the inside, which there is a fully detailed engine underneath this, but the thing is you're not pulling that off again, so get a good look at it. That's about all you're going to see. In fact, I only painted this side because I knew you wouldn't be able to see the other one. Also, quickly before I do a quick cut, put this back in robot mode for a size comparison, I do want to quickly point out, these take up a lot of space when they're in this mode. I mean, 1/100, but this is a big 1/100. These things are pretty sizable. Anyway, jump cut. Man, those wrist ball joints are tight. Anyway, this thing is massive. It's about the same height-ish as the high-grade Getter Arc, but it's like twice as wide and twice as heavy. This thing is chunky. If it wasn't a model kit, it would feel like one of those toys you get as a kid that you can really play with, but I am terrified of damaging this thing because it's hard to get. And I mean, I already broke the antenna on the head once, so it's not without precedent. And aside from accessories, you do get a couple of duplicate parts and other such leftovers. The face vent, the ring on the bazooka, these parts on the fan, propeller, hover bit, top and bottom of those. A couple of extra antennas on the head. Kinda wish they gave you one for the forehead one, but... And finally, a couple of extra polycaps, including this, which I'm assuming this is from the Elgheim, because I don't know what else that would be. So anyway, to wrap this review up, the Walker Gallia is amazing. I love this kit. It was a joy to build. It does everything I wanted to, poses exceptionally well, has a absurd presence, and thankfully is the same scale as the Motoroid Xabungle is coming out, meaning they will be perfect companion pieces. If you're a Xabungle fan and you haven't gotten this yet, you really owe it to yourself to try and get it, at least for a decent price. If somebody tries to upcharge you like 500%, it's kind of getting ripped off, but this is a good kit. Anyway, that's all for this review. Be sure to let me know what you think down in the comments below. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, helps a lot. Subscribe and hit the bell for future reviews. Go follow me on Twitter for updates, and consider supporting me on Patreon so I can keep making reviews just like this one. And as always, until next time, happy building.